The conflict between Guyana and Venezuela dates to the colonial period of both countries. And that colonial dispute, a dispute between Venezuela and Great Britain, that dispute was resolved in 1899 with an arbitral award. An arbitral award that demarcated the territory which is now Guyana. And that award was accepted by Venezuela. Britain did not get everything that it was claiming, but it got a good bit of what it was claiming. It was an arbitral award with a Russian judge, an American judge. Matter of fact, a former Chief Justice of the United States was the head of that arbitration. The arbitration panel sat in Paris, and in 1899, all the parties agreed that this would be the territory, up until 1946, when one of the attorneys working for the Venezuelan side in the dispute arbitration panel left a letter to be opened when he died. And so posthumously, a letter was opened, and that letter claimed that the 1899 arbitral award was a fix, that Venezuela got the wrong side, the shitty end of the deal, and Venezuela needs to do something about it. Now, Venezuela did nothing about it until Guyana was approaching getting independence from Britain, and the recognition of the significant amount of natural resources, the gold, the timber, the manganese, all that was in that significant portion of what is Guyana. It happens that that portion being claimed by Venezuela is 5/8 of Guyana's territory. They claim everything west of the Essequibo River. As a matter of fact, you were to go to a map of Venezuela, let's say at the embassy of Venezuela in any capital or in Caracas, you would see what is Guyana's Essequibo territory on a Venezuelan map as La Zona en Reclamación, the territory to be taken back. And so that dispute has raged ever since 1965, just before the independence was secured in May of 1966. And it's been ups and downs over the decades. At one time, it was frozen for 12 years in a protocol negotiated by the then Prime Minister of Trinidad, Eric Williams. It's been bouncing back and forth between the United Nations good offices, and now it's before the International Court of Justice, which incidentally, Venezuela said it does not accept the jurisdiction of. So we'll see how that plays out. March of this year, the ICJ panel should have heard the first set of arguments, because Guyana formally took the matter in 2018 to the ICJ. But the COVID pandemic caused a stay in those proceedings. So the ICJ is hopefully soon to set the new date for a hearing to start that proceeding. So that dispute for 5/8 of Guyana's territory has a long history dating back to 1899. And over the years, Venezuela has tried to make several overtures for a political deal, give us a piece of territory and we'll forget the whole deal. But Guyana has been adamant that the 1899 award is binding on all parties and they're not going to proceed any bit of territory.
So was the fighting between these two large scale or just diplomatic?
There were clashes of two kinds primarily. There was just before Guyana secured independence in 1966, Venezuela made a little impasse. They occupied an island in the river that separates Guyana and Venezuela, the Cuyuni River. Half of that island is Guyana's, half is theirs. They occupied the whole island as a kind of test of Guyana's willingness to be able to respond militarily. Guyana, being in no position to match their military strength, did a protest along with Britain and the rest of the world. they did not move. There was no effort to move them physically or militarily. But most of the aggressiveness over the years has been economic and diplomatic. For a good number of years in the 70s and the 80s, Venezuela made significant efforts to dissuade any investors looking to exploit that part of Guyana. They made threats about the absence of any stability, given the fact that they posited their claim as being legitimate. For a number of years, there has been the war, so to speak, on the diplomatic front, on the economic security front. Nothing overt, except periodically, one president, Raul Leone, sent a little flotilla. And at one point, Hugo Chavez sent a little flotilla. But there was no overt. And that is partly because it was not in the interest of any Western or South American nations to reopen that dispute. I mean, keep in mind that Brazil has a border with almost every South American country. And if you were to renegotiate that border there, it would affect the border of Brazil, and it will create other nations in the South American continent that have got claims to reopen those claims. So Brazil tried diplomatically, significantly, to ensure that nothing was graduated to the level of overt military action. And coming back to something I mentioned earlier, during the period of the 70s and 80s, there was a socialist posture by the government of Guyana. Guyana's leadership at the time got the overt commitment of Cuba to come and help in case Venezuela made any military overtures. So it was not in the interests of the United States to allow Venezuela to do something that would precipitate Cuba's intervention to support Guyana. So all the parties were acting behind the scenes to ensure that there was no military action on the part of Venezuela. So it was mostly a quote-unquote war conducted by other means.